Chapter 61, System or Space, 2. While Jiao Lijai was filling the pot, an idea suddenly flashed through her mind. Since she could change the shape of the water, maybe she could also change its temperature. The moment this thought appeared, she decided to try it. At first, she didn't know how to do it, but then she recalled how her captain in her previous life controlled the temperature of his fire to roast the mutant animal's meat. The next moment, she felt the cool energy inside her body suddenly become hotter. As the temperature of her energy increased, the water ball started to produce bubbles. After a few minutes, the water ball was boiling while floating and emitting mist. The soldiers and Chu Zhimiao, already drawn by her precise control of water, gathered around to watch. When they saw the water boiling, their eyes widened in shock. Chu Zhimiao was so surprised that she rubbed her eyes several times. Both of them were water-type ability users, but why was there such a huge difference between them? She could barely produce a few gallons of water, while Jiao Lijai could already use hers for attacks, and now she could even control its temperature. Thinking of this, Chu Zhimiao clenched her fists. If she could learn this trick, she and her team wouldn't have to worry about lacking hot water for cooking in the future. Unaware that many people were watching her, Jiao Lijai remained absorbed in her experiment. After filling half the pot with hot water, she moved the water ball to another pot and repeated the process. Because the water was already boiling, they wouldn't have to wait for it to heat up. When she was done, she clapped her hands and said, "Okay, it's done." Chen Qianfeng checked the water and saw it was boiling. He turned to her and asked, "Sister-in-law, how did you do it?" "You mean how I made the water boil?" Jiao Lijai asked after a moment of thought. "Yes," Chen Qianfeng nodded. Jiao Lijai thought for a moment before replying. "I just imagined that the water was being boiled, and then it just happened." When Chu Zhimiao and Chen Qianfeng heard her casual reply, both wore expressions of disbelief. If it were that easy, they would already be able to create ice for attacks. Since she seemed unwilling to explain further, they didn't insist on asking. While the soldiers prepared dinner, Jiao Lijai sat on the small boulder and gazed at the red moon. Looking at the eerie red moon, she was in a daze. At this moment, she was checking her space using her mind. When she broke through to level 1, she hadn't had time to check it. She thought that even if there were changes, they wouldn't be significant. Unexpectedly, not only had the house become bigger, but the farmland had also expanded. Looking at the pond, she noticed that its diameter had doubled from 5 meters to 10 meters. As for the depth, there was no change. Then she turned to the farmland. Based on the corn stalks that now covered half the area, the farmland had also expanded twofold. What surprised her wasn't the increase in black soil area, but the corn stalks themselves. The last time she checked, they had just started sprouting. But after breaking through to level 1, the previous sprouts had already matured and seemed ready to be harvested. Her mind moved to the farmland as she examined the corn. Under normal circumstances, one stalk would produce at most 1 or 2 ears, with the second ear usually being smaller. But the corn in her space not only had 3 to 4 ears per stalk, but each ear was also of similar size. Reaching out, she picked one ear and peeled back the leaves and silk. The kernels were plump and large. Weighing it in her hand, she estimated it to be around 300 grams, almost double the average weight of regular corn. Rubbing her chin, she considered how to harvest the corn. If she had to do it manually, it would be time-consuming and exhausting. What's more, with someone clinging to her right now, entering her space to do the manual work would be difficult. As these thoughts filled her mind, the corn stalks in front of her suddenly disappeared, and a pile of corn ears appeared on the grassland. Jiao Lijai was stunned by the scene in front of her. Her eyes widened in shock as she exclaimed, "This also can be done." The next moment, her mind buzzed, and her vision blurred as a transparent blue screen appeared in front of her. When the dizziness faded, she saw the small screen floating before her. For a moment, she couldn't process what was happening. She stared at the blue screen for a long time before reaching out to touch it. Instantly, the screen lit up, and a row of words appeared. Reading the information, she finally realized that her space wasn't a spiritual space like in the cultivation stories she had imagined. Instead, it was more like the system-based stories she had read before the apocalypse. According to those stories, if her space was a system, there should be a mechanical voice guiding her, giving tasks, punishing, or rewarding her. But ever since she had obtained this space, there had been nothing like that. Before leveling up, she couldn't even see this blue screen. Curious about her space, she read the information before closing the tab. Next, she noticed rows of icons on the screen, each representing different functions. Looking at them, she felt an odd sense of familiarity. It was as if she had been using this kind of system for a long time. Even without names on the icons, she instinctively knew what each icon was for. At this moment, doubts filled her heart as she checked the space's settings. What exactly is this space? What is my background? Why did this system bind to me instead of someone else? Chapter 62, Systems Setting. At this moment, lots of questions filled Zhao Lijai's head, but she had no way to get the answers. Feeling that it was a waste of time to dwell on matters without solutions, she decided to push the thoughts to the back of her mind. She opened the Space's Settings tab and saw that she could enable the auto-harvest, auto-process, and auto-storage functions for the farmland. There was also an irrigation system setting. Since she didn't want to waste the farmland, she set everything to automatic. At the current level, crops would mature once a month due to the different time flow with the outside world and could be hastened using more energy. The grain yield would be 5 kilograms per square meter on average, though different crops would have varying yields. The byproducts from processing the grains would be turned into fertilizer and absorbed by the black soil. As for the processed grains, such as corn kernels, they would be stored in the granary. The granary was a cylindrical silo with a diameter of 30 meters and a height of 50 meters, capable of storing around 31 tons of grain. After checking the farmland, she examined the house. She was taken aback when she saw the detailed information. The first floor had expanded to 250 square meters, with the addition of a foyer. The second floor had expanded to 220 square meters, now featuring a balcony. Aside from the larger space and the new foyer and balcony, everything else remained the same. Her house was still as empty as before. After inspecting her house, she opened the energy source panel. This time, she was surprised to find that her space could convert the zombie virus into energy and absorb it. Rubbing her chin, she recalled the black blood and rotten flesh on her dirty clothes. Since those contained zombie viruses, they must have been converted into energy. No wonder her clothes had holes and food stains left behind, but no black blood or rotten flesh of zombies. Reaching this conclusion, everything that had happened before finally made sense. She continued reading the information and sighed. She had hoped her space could become her energy source and help her level up faster. Unfortunately, she needed crystal cores to sustain the space instead. Every day, 1 crystal core was required to cover the energy consumption. While it wasn't what she had hoped for, it actually made more sense, considering the farmland and pond water contain energy. Therefore, it is normal to obtain more energy from the crystal cores. If the energy wasn't replenished, the space would eventually run out of energy and might even collapse or shut down. To expand her space, she needed 100 crystal cores, and she had to break through to level 2. The upgrade requirements limited how fast her space could progress, as it's not easy for her to break through. After learning more about her space, she checked the crystal cores stored in the drawer of the master bedroom. With the crystal cores given by Jin Zuyan, she should have 29 level 1 transparent cores and 1 level 3 transparent core. As for elemental crystal cores, she only had 1 level 2 metal type core. But right now, there are only 28 level 1, 1 level 3, and 1 level 2 metal type crystal cores. Based on this, her space must have automatically absorbed a core daily, saving her the hassle of manually recharging the space's energy. While she was checking her space, the soldiers had finished preparing dinner. They made a pot of sausage and rice, a pot of mushroom soup, and used another pot of water to boil drinking water. When the food was ready, Zhang Yuan looked at Aitg and said, "Aitg, go call the captain and the others to eat." "Okay." Aitg went to find their captain and saw him lying on the ground with his eyes closed. Squatting beside him, he said, "Captain, dinner is ready." The moment he heard this, Jin Zuyan opened his eyes and sat up. Rubbing his eyes, he replied hoarsely, "MHMM." "Captain, do you want to call your fiancée or should I go call her?" Aitg asked. "I will call her," Jin Zuyan replied. Aitg nodded and went to gather his brothers for dinner. As for Pei Yijun and his team, they had their own supplies and ate separately. After a moment, Jin Zuyan stood up and went to find Jiao Lijai. His body had fully healed after nearly 2 hours of rest, but the energy consumed to repair himself left him famished. The area behind the metal wall wasn't large, so he spotted her at a glance. As he walked over, he noticed she was lost in thought, staring at the red moon in a daze. Squatting beside her, he reached out to hold her hands and asked softly, "Aitg, what are you thinking about?" Feeling the warmth of his palms covering her hands, Jiao Lijai's mind returned from her space. She blinked and turned her head. Seeing Jin Zuyan's gentle gaze, her heart skipped a beat. She cleared her throat and said, "I wasn't thinking about anything." Hearing this, Jin Zuyan let out a low chuckle before teasing. "So, my Aitg was just daydreaming." Jiao Lijai wanted to correct his use of my Aitg, but before she could speak, he added, "Let's go eat. Dinner is ready." As soon as he said that, her stomach let out a loud growl of protest. Covering her stomach, she smiled in embarrassment. Jin Zuyan chuckled and pulled her up. With his broad palm covering her delicate wrist, they walked toward the bonfire. When the soldiers saw them arrive, they glanced at their hands but said nothing. Aitg filled 2 bowls of rice and 2 cups of mushroom soup for them. Handing Jiao Lijai her portion, he said, "Sister-in-law, here is your food. If it's not enough, you can get more." "Thank you," Jiao Lijai replied, accepting the food. Chapter 63, Soft and Smells Nice. Holding the bowl of rice, Jiao Lijai thought the portion was too small. Then, she looked around and noticed the soldiers had the same portion as her. It seems that everyone wouldn't be able to have a full belly. Not to mention that some of them were ability users now. Even as ordinary men, they must have larger appetites. After all, they were soldiers, constantly fighting zombies and traveling non-stop. They had to be both exhausted and starving. Although she felt sorry for them, this was the reality of the apocalypse. The loss of human resources and power made it impossible to maintain production lines. In the future, supplies would become scarcer, and eventually, humans would have to rely on mutant animals and plants to survive. Growing crops would be difficult, since the soil and water were polluted by the zombie virus. Arable land would be limited, and those in power would do everything they could to seize it, leading to countless conflicts, killing many, mostly ordinary people in the process. While she was lost in thought about the future, Jin Zuyan noticed she wasn't eating. He reached out, patted her head, and said in a low voice, "Aitg, don't worry, everything will be fine. I will stay by your side from now on." Hearing his words, Jiao Lijai smiled and said, "Brother Yan, we never know what will happen in the future." Jin Zuyan looked at her deeply but said nothing when he heard her words. He understood that no matter what he told her now, she wouldn't believe him, not after what she had been through in her previous life. He would prove it with his actions. One day, he was sure she would open her heart and let him in. Looking at her, he smiled and said, "Let's eat before the food gets cold." While they took their time eating, the soldiers were already on their 3rd bowl of rice, or 2nd bowl of mushroom soup. Even though the mushrooms in the soup were made from dried mushrooms, they were famished after a whole day. So, they ate fast, fearing if they were a little bit slow, they would eat less. When Jin Zuyan finished his meal, he noticed that the food in the pots had been completely eaten. Standing there, he looked at the empty pot for a moment before walking back to Jiao Lijai. After sitting beside her, he let out a long sigh. Hearing this, Zhao Lijai wiped her lips, looked at him, and asked, "Brother Yan, what's wrong?" Jin Zuyan rubbed his defined 8-pack abs, looked at her, and said aggrievedly, "Zhai, I'm so hungry." Looking at his puppy-like eyes, Zhao Lijai felt as if her heart had been struck by an arrow. Although she appeared calm on the outside, she was screaming inside. Oh my God, how can a cold, ruthless man like him look like a puppy-type boyfriend instead? Shouldn't he be a mature-type man? Amidst her internal panic, she reached out, rubbed Jin Zuyan's soft black hair, and said, "Be good, I will take out some food for you later." As soon as she said this, both of them froze. Her voice had a coaxing, pampering tone, and coupled with her rubbing his head gently, it looked as if she were comforting her boyfriend. It took Zhao Lijai a moment to snap out of her daze and pull back her hand, but before she could, Jin Zuyan grabbed it. The next moment, he leaned closer until their eyes were at the same level. Guiding her palm to caress his hair, he whispered hoarsely, "Zhai, you can do as you please with me." Feeling the soft strands brushing against her fingers and palm, Zhao Lijai's cold heart suddenly began to race. As they gazed into each other's eyes, she found herself drawn into his deep, dark gaze. His eyes were as black as the night, but within them flickered a faint red glow. The moment she saw it, she snapped back to reality. Pulling her hand away, she let out an awkward laugh and said, "Brother Yan, I will go get some food for you." Seeing her red ears, Jin Zuyan let her go. Watching her retreating figure, he smiled and thought, Tilda, my Zhai's hand is so soft. She also smells so nice. I wonder when I will finally be able to hold her in my arms." Not far from him, the soldiers shuddered when they saw his smile. Whenever their captain smiled like that, he was definitely up to something bad. At that moment, they silently lit a candle for Zhao Lijai in their hearts, praying that she would be able to tame the big devil and not end up getting eaten by him instead. After walking away, Zhao Lijai went to her car. The supplies on her car had been loaded by Jin Zuyan, and there was a variety of food available. She checked the food and put those with a short shelf life into her space, exchanging them for longer-lasting products like biscuits and dried food. Once she was done, she took out 2 cartons of banana milk. Each carton contained a liter, enough for a family of 3 under normal circumstances, but for ability users, this amount was just right. Besides the milk, she grabbed 2 loaves of raisin bread, 2 cans of tuna, and 2 cans of apricots. She packed everything into her backpack before heading back. When she returned, she saw Jin Zuyan sitting alone, his back looking unusually lonely. After a brief moment of hesitation, she regained her calm and sat beside him. Opening her backpack, she took out the milk and handed it to him while saying, "Brother Yan, I don't know if you still like banana milk." Jin Zuyan glanced at her, took the milk, and chuckled. He drank the milk and said with a hint of joy, "Zhai still remembers." Amen, Zhao Lijai nodded. The 2 of them finished their food and milk before going to rest. The first half of the night would be guarded by Qin Lizzie and 3 soldiers, while the second half would be watched over by Jin Zuyan, Zhang Yuan, and the Wen brothers. Chapter 64, Boiled Corn. At 5 o'clock in the morning, Zhao Lijai was woken up by the urge to use the toilet. Opening her eyes, she met a pair of deep eyes staring at her. Startled, she raised her hand to punch the person in front of her. But before she could hit his face, her hand was caught and she was pushed back. Lying on the ground, she stared at him in a daze. On top of her, Jin Zuyan smiled amusedly. Looking at her dazed expression, he couldn't help but lean down to give her a peck on the lips before saying, "Good morning." Zhai. Feeling his cold lips, Zhao Lijai finally fully woke up. She pushed him and said, "Brother Yan, you startled me." Jin Zuyan let go of her hand and helped her sit up. He stretched out his hand to comb her hair with his fingers. When he touched the ends of her hair, his eyes flashed for a moment before returning to normal. Her hair is growing so fast, he thought inwardly. When he met her, her hair was shoulder length, but now her hair had reached her shoulder blades. After sitting for a moment, Zhao Lijai said, "Brother Yan, I need to use the bathroom." Hearing this, Jin Zuyan asked casually, "Do you want me to accompany you?" The moment she heard this, the tips of Zhao Lijai's ears turned red. She glared at him and said, "No need." Jin Zuyan didn't know why she glared at him. Staying in the open field was dangerous in the first place. If she went alone, what if she got attacked when she was halfway done with her urgent business? Looking at her back, he shook his head and asked, "Aitg, do you need wet tissues? I collected some for you from a mini market before." Zhao Lijai almost slipped when she heard his words. Turning around, she said through gritted teeth, "I have it." "Don't go too far. Shout if you need me," Jin Zuyan added. This time, Zhao Lijai was too lazy to talk to him. Thanks to him, everyone now knew she was going to relieve herself. When she reached the metal wall, she bent her knees and leaped to the other side. As she landed lightly, she looked around. When she was sure there was no one around, she flashed into her space. The moment she appeared in her space, she quickly went to the bathroom and finished her business. Afterward, she washed her face and left her space. Before going back, she went to her car and took out a sack of corn from her space. Using her car as cover, she carried the sack and locked her car. The moment Jin Zuyan saw her, he came over and asked, "Aitg, can you give me some water? I want to wash my face and hair." Looking at the dirt sticking to his hair, Zhao Lijai placed the sack down and filled up the pot used to boil water yesterday. This pot of water held around 4 or 5 gallons, enough for him to wash up. Seeing the water, Jin Zuyan smiled and said, "Thank you, Aitg, you are so good." Hearing his praise, Zhao Lijai felt happy and replied, "Brother Yan, if you need more water, just let me know." In her previous life, only her captain would thank and praise her whenever she prepared water for the team. As for the others, they took her kindness for granted and complained when she was unable to give them the same amount of water due to her lack of energy. "Okay," Jin Zuyan nodded before carrying the pot behind the military trucks. With the trucks blocking people's view, he took off his clothes and pants. He had already prepared some shampoo and soap beforehand. Now, he could take a quick bath. While he was scrubbing his body while humming a tune, Zhao Lijai sat near the bonfire. The bonfire had been extinguished, and she didn't want to go find dried wood. So, she peeled the corn and cleaned the silks. Afterward, she opened her palm and filled up a pot with water. Raising her hand, she controlled the water's temperature. After a moment, the water ball boiled. With one hand controlling the water so it continued boiling, she put the corn into the pot with the other hand. While she boiled the corn, Jin Zuyan had already finished showering and brushing his teeth. Since he kissed and hugged his girl often, he had to keep his mouth and body fresh and clean. Otherwise, she would dislike him. When he walked over to Zhao Lijai holding the big pot, he smelled the fragrance of corn wafting in the air. He placed the pot down. He lowered his head and looked into the pot. Seeing so much corn being boiled inside, he asked, "Aitg, where did you get this corn?" Hearing his question, Zhao Lijai replied casually, "I found them in the supermarket before. Although it's not so fresh, it is still edible." The fragrance of corn woke up the soldiers and Pei Yijun's team. Unlike Jin Zuyan, the soldiers went to relieve themselves before returning. They used water created by Chen Qianfeng to wash their face and hands. Afterward, Wenmo took down the metal wall and created several blades from the metal. The soldiers' blades were damaged, which slowed down their killing speed. So, Wen Kai and Wen Mo worked together to make more blades to replace the damaged or broken ones. Since the metal used to make the blades was created from a metal-type ability, the blades were stronger and sharper. But due to the limited energy of the Wen brothers, they only managed to make 5 blades before running out of energy. They needed to rest for 2 hours to fully recover before continuing to make more. When the soldiers and Pei Yijun's team walked over, the corn was cooked. Zhao Lijai withdrew her energy, looked at the soldiers and said, "I made some boiled corn. Everyone can have it for breakfast." Chapter 65. His Gift 1. After Zhao Lijai finished speaking, she took 2 corns from the pot and handed them to Jin Zuyan while saying, "Brother Yan, here." Jin Zuyan took the corn and was stunned by the weight. He glanced at her meaningfully and said, "Thank you." Jiao Lijai smiled at him and took 2 corns for herself. They sat on the side and had their breakfast. At the same time, the soldiers each took 1 corn and started to eat. They still needed to check the factories and get some clothes and underwear for themselves. As for Pei Yijun and his team, they were surprised that Jiao Lijai had found corn. The only place they had visited for supplies was the supermarket near Linen University. Thinking about the supplies taken away by Teacher Cow, Li Yang and the rest were still angry and unwilling. But now that they had more supplies, they were no longer as angry as before. They just felt annoyed whenever they thought about how the supplies they had risked their lives to get were being enjoyed by those beasts in human skin. Li Yang reached into the pot and took 1 corn. When he held it, he was taken aback and said, "This corn is so big and plump. How did we miss this kind of corn when we got the supplies?" When they heard his words, they went to get a cob and realized that the corn was bigger than usual. After they took a bite, the corn juice filled their mouths. The corn was fragrant, and the kernels were plump and sweet. "This corn must have been placed in the corner or the warehouse," Han Jai said. Feng Yun shook his head and said, "I checked the warehouse and corners before, and they were empty." Pei Yijun looked in Jiao Lijai's direction thoughtfully and said, "All right, stop talking about this matter." After they finished the boiled corn, Jiao Lijai asked for several empty gallon bottles from the soldiers and used them to store the corn water. Seeing this, Xiao Qi came over and asked, "Sister-in-law, do you like to drink corn water?" Jiao Lijai shook her head and explained, "While we can replace drinking water with corn water, it's better to use it to make soup or cook noodles. Corn water is similar to vegetable stock. It is full of vitamins, minerals, starch, and flavor, all of which can boost the texture, taste, and nutritional value of other dishes," she added. Hearing this, Xiao Qi nodded and said, "Sister-in-law, you are so knowledgeable." "I also learned it from others," Jiao Lijai replied. After she filled 2-gallon bottles, there was still some corn water left. Feeling that it would be a waste to discard it, Xiao Qi went to get his canteen. He drank the rest of the water in his canteen before filling it up with corn water. When he was done, there were only around 2 cups of corn water left in the pot. He scooped them out and stored them in an empty mineral water bottle. After the pot was finally empty, he grinned and stored the corn water in his backpack. After they packed up their sleeping bags, the soldiers climbed into their trucks and armored vehicles. When Jiao Lijai opened her car's driver's side door, Jin Zuyan held her hand and said, "I will drive." Since he was willing to be her driver, Jiao Lijai didn't insist and went into the passenger seat. Not long after, they drove to the factory district. Although it was called the factory district, there were only several factories in the area. They had already cleaned up 2 factories yesterday. Today, they planned to check the rest. While the soldiers and Pei Yijun's team thought they were there to clear zombies, so survivors could get supplies, only Jin Zuyan and Jiao Lijai knew their real purpose. They drove for 50 minutes before reaching the 3rd factory. Unlike the previous factories, this one was a fabric and clothing factory. It processed raw materials into fabrics and then turned them into clothes and other products. Due to the numerous machines and warehouses, this factory was built on top of 3 hectares of land. Before they even reached the entrance, they could hear the roars of zombies. This time, they parked their cars a kilometer from the factory gate. When they got out, Zhang Yuan came over to report, "Captain, our brothers have woken up. They are eating and resting in the car right now." Hearing this, Jin Zuyan let out a sigh of relief and said, "Appoint some brothers to stay with them for protection. The rest will go inside with me to clear the zombies." Understood. After Zhang Yuan left, Jin Zuyan went to his armored car and prepared his gun, ammunition, and medicines, while Jiao Lijai climbed into her car. She took out several bottles of her space's pawned water, milk, and bread from her space and put it inside her backpack. After awakening an ability, they would feel weak and hungry. Drinking milk could help them recover faster. Carrying her backpack, She walked over to the military cars after she locked her car. When she arrived, she saw 6 men leaning against the seats with pale faces. Seeing her, the soldiers were stunned. It was the first time they had seen a girl after the apocalypse, let alone one who was clean and delicate like her. "Hello, brothers. I heard that you just woke up from a coma. I have some milk and bread. You can have them," Zhao Lijai greeted them. Hearing her words, the soldiers were taken aback. In their current situation, they understood clearly how hard it was to get food, let alone milk. So it didn't feel right to accept this girl's food. "Comrade, we have food and water. You should keep that for yourself," Zhou Huajian said with a smile. "Brother, this milk and bread will spoil if kept for too long," Zhao Lijai replied. Chapter 66, His Gift, Too. Before Zhou Huajian could say another word, a young man sitting beside him suddenly asked, "Comrade, do we need to pay for the bread and milk?" When the other soldiers heard his words, they glanced at him knowingly with a trace of embarrassment. "I can't finish it all, and it would be a waste if it spoils. It will be great if you can help me finish it. I won't charge you for the bread and milk." As soon as she finished speaking, the young man reached out his pale hands and said, "Then I will help you finish it. It's not good to waste food." Zhao Lijai looked at his expressionless face and found him somewhat familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had seen him before. She took out 10 loaves of bread, 10 cartons of milk, and 10 bottles of her pond water. After taking them out, her backpack was empty. She zipped it up and said, "Thank you for your help, brother." "MHMM." The young man nodded as he opened the milk carton. Not long after, Jin Zuyan walked over and asked, "Aitg, what are you doing?" Hearing his voice, Zhao Lijai asked back, "Brother Yan, are we going in now?" Jin Zuyan nodded, handed her a dagger made by the Wen brothers and said, "This is for you. I asked them to modify the shape and weight. It should suit you." Zhao Lijai's eyes lit up when she saw the dagger. It was so similar to the one she owned in her previous life. She took the dagger and pulled it out from its sheath. When she saw the mark on the blade, she was stunned. This dagger wasn't just similar, it was actually her dagger. In her previous life, she had obtained this dagger by chance at Sanchu Base's market for a low price. She had planned to go there and buy it again. She never expected that her dagger had actually been made by the Wen brothers. Seeing her go silent, Jin Zuyan knew she recognized it. In their previous life, he had to find a way to give it to her while hiding his involvement. He hadn't wanted his enemies to know that he cared about her, so he could only protect her from the shadows. Even giving her a gift took a lot of effort. Now, he could give it to her directly. This feeling was amazing. After a moment of silence, Zhao Lijai looked at him and said softly, "Brother Yan, thank you." Both of them understood that she was thanking him for the gifts in both lifetimes. Reaching out, Jin Zuyan patted her head gently and said, "As long as you like it." Checking his watch, he added, "The others are waiting for us. We should go now." "Okay." Zhao Lijai nodded and tied the dagger to her right thigh. Before leaving, Jin Zuyan looked at his men and said, "All of you should rest and replenish your energy. Familiarize yourselves with your abilities too." "Understood." The 6 of them nodded and replied in unison. After Jin Zuyan left with Zhao Lijai, Zhou Huajian looked at his brothers and asked in disbelief, "Did you guys see that?" The soldiers nodded. "That girl might be the person our captain always missed," the young man said suddenly. Looking at him, one of the soldiers asked, "Shen Jinj, how did you know?" "I saw her picture in our captain's wallet before. Although she is older now, her features haven't changed much, so I recognized her," Shen Jinj replied. "Is that why you accepted her food?" another soldier asked. Shen Jinj glanced at him as if he were looking at someone stupid and said nothing. Not only were bread and milk hard to come by now, but it was also common sense not to waste food. What's more, the most delicious food was free food. Only a fool would refuse free food and save money. Even if he said nothing, the soldiers understood his mind. In the entire Phantom team, he was known for his frugality, almost stingy. If there was someone who could rival how frugal he was, it was only Chen, Kai, and Feng. Both of them were avid foodies, but they were so frugal that they would buy a portion of food and split it, each paying half and getting half a portion. After finishing a carton of milk and a loaf of bread, Shen Jinj looked at his brothers and asked, "If you guys don't want to eat, I will finish it all." The moment they heard this, they snatched the food and milk. Since they took away all the milk, Shen Jinj continued eating the bread while drinking the water. After he drank the water, his eyes flashed with surprise. Unlike when he drank the milk, he felt a warm energy flowing through his body after drinking the water. His previous weariness and headache lessened. He finished the entire bottle and felt his body warm up. Maybe he ate too fast or too much, but he suddenly had the urge to burp. Following his instinct, he opened his mouth and let out a big one, burf. Under normal circumstances, his brothers would only glare or kick him if he burped in their faces. But this time, he saw his brother's hair burn because of the fire that came out of his mouth along with his burp. "Shen Jinj, what the hell?" Gao Bohai exclaimed in surprise. Seeing one of them suddenly catch fire, the soldiers were shocked and quickly helped extinguish it by pouring some milk on his head. With a hiss, the fire was put out, but the soldier's hair had been burned, making him look funny yet pitiful. After the fire went out, Zhou Huijian looked at his brother and asked, "Shen Jinj, what was that?" Feeling the heat in his throat, Shen Jinj quickly stepped out of the armored car and let out another burp. Barag. This time, they saw the blue flame coming out of his mouth. Chapter 67, Hostility. The soldiers' eyes widened in surprise as they watched the flame burn the withered bushes nearby. Even Shen Jinj was stunned. He looked at his brothers and said, "I didn't mean it." As he spoke, smoke still came out of his mouth and nostrils. Seeing this, the soldiers backed away from him, and one of them said, "Shen Jinj, stop talking. If you want to talk, look away from us." Feeling wronged, Shen Jinj could only turn his body and explain, "Brother, I really didn't mean to burn anyone's hair. I just felt like my stomach was burning, and I had the urge to burp." Hearing this, the soldiers looked at each other in confusion. They didn't know what was going on either. Not long after, Xiao Qi walked over and saw the situation. After learning what had happened, he burst out laughing. He laughed so hard that he almost toppled over and pissed himself. As he laughed and laughed, the faces of his brothers grew darker and darker. When he finally calmed down, he realized that he had probably dug a hole for himself. "Xiao Qi, are you done laughing?" Gao Bohai asked unhappily. Hearing this, Xiao Qi lowered his head and coughed before replying, "Brother Gao, I'm done." When they heard his reply, the six of them gnashed their teeth and glared at him at the same time. Noticing their anger, Xiao Qi quickly raised his hands and said, "Brothers, please calm down. Gentlemen talk with their mouths, not with their fists." After they calmed down, he added, "Actually, the flame was Brother Shen's ability. It's similar to my ability, storage space." "Ability? What is that?" Gao Bohai asked. "Well, it's something like a superpower. I don't really know how to explain it. Anyway, you will feel energy inside your body. When you gain control of that energy, you can use it to fight or defend. Some abilities can't be used for fighting, but they have other functions," Xiao Qi said while scratching his head. When he saw the water bottles, his eyes lit up. He placed his hand above them and said, "Keep." The next moment, the water bottles disappeared. Seeing this, the soldiers were shocked. Then he took out the water bottles again and said, "This is my space storage ability. I can store anything except living things in my space and take it out later. Although my space isn't big, the time flow inside is slower. So the supplies kept inside will have a longer shelf life." After hearing his explanation, Shen Jinj closed his eyes and tried to feel the energy inside his body. Not long after, he found a burning hot energy flowing through his veins. Using his mind, he tried to control the energy. It took him a few minutes before he was able to move the energy from his throat to his fingertips. The next moment, 5 pillars of blue flame appeared on his fingertips. "Wow, Brother Shen, you really got a fire-type ability. It's similar to our captain's ability," Xiao Qi exclaimed in admiration. Opening his eyes, Shen Jinj saw that his fingertips looked like a torch. He focused his mind and retracted his energy. In a second, the blue flame disappeared instantly. He smiled in satisfaction and said, "Not bad. It's just that my energy doesn't seem to be much. I feel tired after using it for a while." Aitg nodded and said, "Brother Shen, that is normal when you have just awakened your ability. The more you use it, the more energy you will have. The only downside is that we get hungry faster when we use our abilities." But the captain said that to get stronger, we need to continuously use up our energy and replenish it. When our energy pool hits a bottleneck, we will be able to break through and level up to the next stage. Hearing this, they nodded and said, "So that's how it is. For now, we can only keep training and kill more zombies to get stronger faster," Aitg said with a sigh. At this moment, none of them realized that his fire-type ability was different from others. After learning about the so-called ability power, the 6 of them continued training to control their energy. Their captain had told them to familiarize themselves with their abilities, so they needed to master them as soon as possible. At the same time, Jiao Lijai, Pei Yijin's team, and the soldiers finally arrived at the factory's entrance. As soon as they got closer, the zombies trapped behind the tall cement wall and steel gate rushed over, roaring wildly. They reached their rotten arms through the gate, banging against it, trying to grab the fresh meat in front of them. The roars of the zombies were deafening, and their numbers were at least 1,000, if not more. Standing 10 meters away from the gate, Pei Yijin turned to Jin Zuyan and asked, "Captain Jin, do you have any plans? Or do you want to do it by yourself?" Zhang Yuan frowned, noticing the hidden hostility in Pei Yijin's tone toward his captain. He couldn't understand what was wrong with this young master's brain. Although they hadn't rescued him from Linen University, they had still picked him up and helped him and his team get supplies. Even if he didn't feel grateful, he shouldn't harbor hostility toward them. Wasn't he worried they would abandon him if he annoyed the captain too much? If Zhang Yuan could sense the hostility, how could Jin Zuyan not? But he didn't care. He had only used Pei Yijin as an excuse to search for Jiao Lijai. As for what the future held, that would depend on his mood. After all, he had no intention of babysitting this young master. While Jin Zuyan didn't care about his provocation, Jiao Lijai was unhappy. She turned and asked, "Senior Pei, you are known as the strategist in the student union. Do you have any plans?" Chapter 68, Newfound Confidence. Hearing Jiao Lijai's words, the others were surprised. While it seemed like she was praising Pei Yijin, only Jin Zuyan noticed her dissatisfaction. A smile flashed in his eyes as he reached out to pat her head. Then he leaned closer and whispered, "Zhai, don't be angry. It's not worth it." "Who is angry? I'm just asking," Jiao Lijai muttered. Seeing them flirting even in this kind of situation, Pei Yijin was annoyed. His gaze turned cold as he said, "Captain Jin, I think it's better for us to work separately. My team isn't used to working in large groups." Hearing this, Jin Zuyan smiled and said, "Young Master Pei, this factory had at least 30,000 to 50,000 workers. Are you sure your team can handle it alone? I wouldn't want to be blamed by the higher-ups if something happened to you. After all, you are the precious heir of the Pei family," he added with a sigh. Hearing his words, the soldiers lowered their heads, hiding their gloating as they chuckled. Their captain really knew how to make people angry. Pei Yijin noticed the ridicule in his tone and replied coldly, "I'm more than capable of protecting myself. Captain Jin doesn't have to worry about me or my team." Jin Zuyan spread his arms and said, "All right then, we will separate after we clean up these zombies." After speaking, he turned to the soldiers and ordered, "Wen Kai, Wen Mo, open the gate. The rest of you prepare for battle." "Yes, Captain," the soldiers responded in unison. Even though they answered together, their voices were low, as if they were whispering. Watching them, Jiao Lijai found it amusing. As Wen Kai and Wen Mo moved toward the gate, Jiao Lijai pulled out her dagger and opened her palm. In an instant, 5 water blades floated above it. As the gate slowly opened, She flicked her wrist and sent the water blades flying toward the crowd of zombies, beheading several zombies at once. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of breaking bones was swallowed by the zombies' roars. Black blood covered the ground as the headless zombies fell to the ground with a thud. The water blades kept flying at high speed through the zombies. Wherever they passed, rotten heads would roll to the ground. With Zhao Lijai holding the front line, Wenmo opened half of the gate, controlling the flow of zombies so that only 5 could pass at a time. Next, Wen Kai created a large metal ball and placed it beside his brother. Crack. The heavy ball cracked the ground as it landed. Then, he pulled out his blade. Rather than relying on his ability, he preferred to fight with his blade and fists. Seeing his brother rush toward the zombies, Wenmo sighed and formed 10 metal needles from the large metal ball. Each needle was half a meter long with a diameter of 3 centimeters. Roar! As the zombies charged, he narrowed his eyes and waved his hand. Stab, stab, stab. In less than a second, 10 zombies dropped lifelessly to the ground, the metal needles piercing their skulls and destroying their brains. Jin Zuyan looked at the soldiers and asked with raised eyebrows, "What are you waiting for?" Hearing this, the soldiers drew their blades and joined the fight. Those with abilities held the front line, while letting some zombies pass so their teammates without abilities could train and improve their combat skills. Standing to the side, Jin Zuyan observed his soldiers fighting. When he saw one of them about to be ambushed from behind, he swiftly pulled out his dagger and threw it. Stab. The dagger pierced the zombie's brain, and it collapsed instantly. Jin Zuyan walked over, retrieved his dagger, and said, "Watch your back when you fight. Focus on yourself and your nearby teammates. Don't worry about those farther away." "Yes, Captain," the soldier responded before he continued fighting the zombies. Chapter 69. Injured. After a while, Pei Yijin and his team finally joined the battle. With them killing zombies, ordinary soldiers can rest for a while every time they kill a zombie. While the soldiers were getting better at killing zombies, Feng Yun was struggling. He was an ordinary person, so his strength and stamina couldn't compare to that of ability users. At this moment, he was breathing heavily after killing 7 zombies. Despite using a sharp blade, it still needed strength and precision to swing it and kill his target. After he killed another zombie, he bent his waist and gasped for breath. Before he could catch his breath, he smelled a rancid stench coming from behind him, followed by the roar of a zombie. Roar! The instant he heard it, his body instinctively jumped to the side. The next moment, he saw a zombie fall to the ground. Without wasting the opportunity, he raised his blade and swung downward. Crack! The blade was sharp and well worth the price. With one swing, the zombie's head rolled to the ground. A smile appeared on his face, but before he could celebrate, he heard Chu Zhimiao's urgent shout. "Feng Yun, watch out." The moment he heard her, he turned around and raised his blade. Clang! The blade managed to block the zombie's claws from piercing his body, but he failed to avoid the attack completely. The sharp claws left a shallow scratch on his palm. Feeling the sting, his heart pounded wildly as fear surged through him. Being scratched by a zombie had only one outcome: death. He had fought so hard to survive, yet fate seemed to be playing a cruel joke on him. Just when he had seen a glimmer of hope, he had been injured by a zombie. Was there really no way for him to survive and reunite with his parents? Unwillingness filled his heart, and rage clouded his mind. Ag! He let out a furious shout and shoved the zombie back. Staggering a few steps, the zombie struggled to regain its footing. But before it could, Feng Yun had already raised his blade and swung down. Crack! The zombie's head split open, and black blood splattered across his face. The zombie slowly slumped to the ground, but he didn't stop. He continued hacking at its head, turning it into minced flesh. Watching this, everyone sensed that something was wrong with him. Jin Zuyan frowned and decided to step in. If this man kept shouting, he would attract even more zombies. Before the blade could fall again, Jin Zuyan grabbed Feng Yun's wrist and said, "Enough." Hearing his voice, Feng Yun finally regained his senses. When he turned his head, he met Jin Zuyan's deep eyes. His heart skipped a beat, and he pulled his hand out of Jin Zuyan's grip. Fearing that he would be killed, he hid his hand behind his back and walked in Pei Yijun's direction. Although it was only for a moment, Jin Zuyan had seen the wound on Feng Yun's palm. He stood there, watching his back thoughtfully. While there was a possibility of awakening an ability, the chances were low. If Feng Yun had low immunity, he would turn into a zombie in at most 2 hours. If that happened during a critical moment, Pei Yijun and his team might die. At this thought, he looked at Pei Yijun with a complicated gaze. After hesitating for a moment, he headed in Pei Yijun's direction. While everyone was busy fighting the zombies, Jin Zuyan suddenly appeared behind Feng Yun and grabbed his collar. Caught off guard, Feng Yun was lifted off the ground. Before he could say a word, Jin Zuyan carried him like a sack with one hand and rushed back to his team. When Jin Zuyan finally let go of his hold, Feng Yun fell to the ground with a thud. He glared at him and asked angrily, "Captain Jin, what do you mean by this? Do you think I'm a chicken you can carry as you wish?" Standing in front of him, Jin Zuyan looked at him and said solemnly, "I know you are injured." As soon as he heard this, Feng Yun's eyes widened, and he stared at Jin Zuyan with his mouth open. After a moment, he regained his composure and asked, "Are you going to kill me?" Seeing that he could remain calm even in this situation, Jin Zuyan's previous bad impression of him slightly improved. This boy, though young and inexperienced, had the potential to become a strong fighter if trained properly. He reached out his hand to Feng Yun and said, "I won't kill you until the last second." Hearing this, Feng Yun was taken aback. "What do you mean?" he asked. "My soldiers were wounded before, but they didn't turn into zombies. Instead, they awakened abilities. So unless you fully transform into a zombie and lose your mind, I won't kill you," Jin Zuyan said calmly. The moment he heard this, hope ignited in Feng Yun's heart. After a brief hesitation, he reached out and grabbed Jin Zuyan's hand. After pulling him up, Jin Zuyan said, "It takes at least an hour at most 2 for the zombie mutation process. After we clear out the zombies in this area, we will wait for 2 hours. If you don't mutate by then, you will be fine." "Can I really survive?" Feng Yun asked. "That depends on you. Whether you win or lose, it's all on you," Jin Zuyan replied calmly. Just as he finished speaking, Jiao Lijai walked over and asked, "Brother Yan, what's wrong?" While fighting, she noticed the situation. To level up, she had been using her water ability instead of her dagger. After nearly an hour of combat, she was panting from exhaustion, having consumed almost all of her energy. Seeing her sweating, Jin Zuyan reached out to wipe away her sweat and replied, "He was injured. We will wait for 2 hours." The moment she heard this, Jiao Lijai understood. She looked at Feng Yun and asked, "Do you want some water?" In less than 5 minutes, the number of zombies had already decreased by 1/5. Seeing the soldiers' effectiveness in killing zombies, Li Yang said in surprise, "They are indeed worthy of the title as the best. Even without any abilities, they can kill zombies faster than me." When Chu Zhimiao saw the zombies being harvested like cabbages, she grew anxious. She looked at Li Yang and said, "Li Yang, let's go kill some zombies too." Before Li Yang could reply, Feng Yun had already pulled out a blade he had bought from Wen Mo in exchange for 5 kilograms of rice and said, "If none of you want to go, I will go myself." As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed forward. Seeing him go alone, Chu Zhimiao called out, "Hey, wait for me." Although the two of them were eager to get stronger and collect some crystals, they knew their limits. They only dared to kill the zombies that escaped the net. When a zombie pounced at her, Chu Zhimiao clenched her jaw and swung her iron rod. Thud. The iron rod struck the side of the zombie's head. Unfortunately, her strength wasn't enough to kill it. Roar. The zombie only paused for a moment before lunging at her again. Its mouth opened wide, aiming for her neck. Seeing this, Chu Zhimao jumped to the side and then swung her iron rod at the zombie's back. Thud. This time, the zombie lost its footing and fell to the ground. Taking advantage of the moment, she raised her weapon and struck the zombie's head several times. The sound of the iron rod colliding with bone echoed in her ears. Her blood boiled, but her hands trembled. Taking this first step had never been easy, but when she saw the zombie stop moving, the fear in her heart lessened. It turned out that zombies weren't as scary as she had thought. As long as she kept her eyes open and watched their movements, she could dodge and counterattack. With this newfound confidence, she continued fighting.